Before we get into that, let's talk briefly about you're going to need to get licensed in any field that you go into. The mental health fields require licensure because they, you have to have a state license in order to provide services to people. So if you're going to put a shingle out and say, I'm starting my own private practice and I'm going to be a psychologist. Well, in order to call yourself a psychologist, you have to be licensed by the state board. If you want to call yourself a social worker and provide services, therapeutic services, then you have to get, in most states, it's called a licensed clinical social worker. Then you have to get licensed as a clinical social worker from the state board of social work. Each state requires you to get licensed separately. So that means if you're licensed in one state, you're for example, a psychologist in that state, but you're not a psychologist in another state officially, or at least you can't provide services in there. There is a caveat to that. And I notice I've got this note right here that if you're working strictly in an academic setting, so you're only working at a university and you're not providing any services to the public, you may be providing services in that you're doing research with the public, but you're not actually putting yourself out there to provide services, all part of research. Then you don't have to get licensed. And in fact, there's a good chance that wherever you're going to college, you're going to work with psychologists who are not licensed. Now, there are a lot of fields that are not licensable. So, for example, in psychology, you could be an educational psychologist, a research psychologist, experimental psychologist. You could be an organizational psychologist. There's a lot of other fields within psychology besides clinical and counseling that don't provide services. So as a result, you wouldn't need to get licensed because you're not actually providing mental health services in the public. There is one within psychology that we're not going to talk about called a school psychologist that indeed can provide services, but that's a little bit of a specialty area. And there's a number of other factors that go into it. So if there's an interest in that area at any point, you can feel free at the end of the course to get in touch with me and we can discuss that. So here's what you're going to need regardless of the field. You need a license. Okay. So in order to get a license, you're going to need, one is to have an undergraduate degree from an accredited college or university. I'm going to tell you more about the importance of accreditation for universities in just a little bit. But for right now, know that you're going to need that undergraduate degree from an accredited university. Next, you're going to need a graduate degree from an accredited graduate program. Notice I say accredited graduate program. They may not be in a university. There are freestanding graduate programs in certain areas. And so they are designed specifically to provide you a graduate degree, and they're not a part of a traditional university. As long as it's accredited, and again, I'm going to go over what accreditation for programs are, which is different than accreditation for universities, then you'll want to get your degree from there. There are some variations about getting accreditation or getting a graduate degree from an accredited program. There's some flexibility within that. And again, I'll go over that in a little bit. Next, you're going to need a certain amount of clinical supervision, and that varies from degree to degree. So psychology requires a certain amount of hours. Social work requires a certain amount of hours. Each one of them requires a certain amount of hours, and how they're counted varies from field to field. And I'll talk more about that as we go through it as well. And then finally, you're going to have to pass a licensing exam. It's very common for licensing exams. There's a national licensing exam in every one of these fields. So you'll have to pass the national licensing exam. You'll then need to pass what's called a jurisprudence exam. And a jurisprudence exam is an exam on basically law and ethics of your state that you're applying to. And then you may have an oral exam. And if you do an oral exam, they will actually sit you in front of a panel, and the panel will ask you questions. Usually they'll present a case to you, and then you have to discuss that case. But that varies a lot from state to state and profession to profession. So we're not going to go into all the different exams. This will be the full extent of the discussion of the licensing exams. And that's down the road a piece, right? Because you're just needing to get into your graduate school. You're not needing to know right now exactly how to pass all of them, but know that that's the process. So it's a long process. It's 4 years of undergraduate, it's at least a couple of years to get a master's if you're in a master's program. Then it's could be at least another year or so before you get your number of hours that are required for you to be able to sit for your licensing exam. So it's a process. This is not something to be taken lightly. It's going to take a lot of years of your hard-earned time and effort. And so that's where I want you to really think about it. Is this what you want to do? And if you do, that's great. Then we'll help you make that decision.